I caught him on the head, but I didn't know it was that hard of I didn't know if he was knocked out or he just lost balance because he was off balance. And as he fell, I looked at his head and I went for the follow-up shot because to immediately start, because I thought he was going to grab my leg now we're in a wrestling match. And as he fell, I saw his head touch the canvas before his hands did. And that's how I knew, listen, I think I got him.
You're listening to the MatchKitCast with me, Ben Karpinski, bringing you closer to the athletes on the MatchKit.co platform. Dricus Du Plessis back in SA, or as I like to think of you now as Dricus Du Plessis. That was probably my favorite name of when you were in the UFC. How was it? How was the whole experience?
Yeah, except that was the only negative thing I really have to say about it was the fact that they couldn't pronounce my name.
Well, they were always going to mess it up slightly.
Yeah, so I mean, when I got there at first, somebody put an S before the C. It was Drisc.
Dricus.
So that's Dricus. Everybody's like Dricus Du Plessis. No, they didn't say Du Plessis. Du Plessis. Dricus Du Plessis. And I was like, where? I understand saying an R for especially the American folk. They don't say the R like we do. So saying Dricus is really hard. So they say Dricus, it's fine. But when they read the name and the surname, it made no sense to them. They're like, no, you can't be French. You're from South Africa. No ways. So it was Du Plessis and Dricus. Somebody wrote it wrong on a piece of paper, and I was like, at first I thought to myself, how do you get my name Dricus? I can understand this to pronounce it is harder for the American people, but Dricus, there's no S. And then I saw on a piece of paper, the first initial information they have about me, somebody wrote wrong, and that just went down a long line. Everybody called me Dricus, and for the first 2 days, and I was like, that's not my name. And then I saw the spelling error, and I was like, oh, that's why.
But didn't you get the same kind of stuff when you were fighting in KSW?
Not at all.
Now you got Eastern Europeans. They're better with names.
Eastern Europeans are just better with the way they say R, because there's no real R in America. They don't say Dricus. They never do make that sound with their mouths. So in Eastern Europe, the R sound like they can say Dricus easily.
Okay.
So I mean that was that was interesting, but I mean. Yeah, that was probably the coolest experience ever. I mean, Dana White slaughtered my name the worst of everybody.
Yeah, exactly, because he made a special kind of thing about the fact that you might not know this guy, but you must. And there was a really cool video that went out pre-fight.
That was awesome.
But as soon as he starts saying it, everyone else is going to pick up on what he said. Obviously.
Yeah, I was like, no, don't say it like that, Dana. But they actually had me make a recording, so it was the day before weight cut. Before the weighing days, we had to do the photo shoots or maybe 2 days. The photo shoot, the shadow boxing before the fight. Get with your UFC kit and everything. The first shoot for the UFC photo and video, and they made me on a recording say my name and surname with fight name exactly that way I should be saying it, because nobody could get it. So yeah, I mean that was the only big problem that there ever was my name.
Okay, so we've been talking about this for quite a while now. I've been working with you on the content for about 18 months. Obviously, you've been fighting for such a long time. This was always the plan. This was always the goal. This was always the dream. At what stage did it sink in that you actually in the UFC? When you landed in Abu Dhabi, or when you just got to the hotel and people started talking to you? So
for me, I refused to let myself go into that mindset, because I was like, I don't have enough time to prepare. Well, preparing for the fight. It was a short notice fight, but I always said, I told everybody, it's not a short notice fight. I've been preparing for this fight for 11 years. It's not a short notice fight. I couldn't have been more prepared in my whole life. So, I mean, even though I only had 2 weeks notice to get ready for this specific fight, I've always been ready for this fight. I've always been training for this fight. So, once the fight came, I accepted the fight. They said, okay, we have the fight. And then Monet, my coach, was on the farm. I had to let him know. And he asked, cool, who are we fighting? And I was like, oh, that little minor detail. I forgot to ask. I didn't ask them who I was fighting. And then I was like, I've been getting the news for 2 days now that I know I'm fighting in the UFC. And I forgot to ask who my opponent was. And I just went on the fight card and I saw there's one guy who doesn't have an opponent, but he's on the main card. And it's probably not going to be my fight. So I was like, well, I don't know who I'm fighting. And I messaged my agent and I was like, sorry, just guys, I know I signed the contract and everything, but I didn't have time to read through it. Who am I fighting? And I'm making sure what weight division, all that stuff, everything's golden. So everything happened so fast, and the amount of paperwork that went into it was insane. So for me, I couldn't allow myself.
Was that because of COVID, or just is that how UFC paperwork?
Yeah, UFC, but I guess usually you'll have a few. I mean, I was literally found out about the fight on Monday. They said you're flying out on Thursday. So I was like, okay. Next week, Thursday, you're flying out. So I had like a week to get everything sorted right now. And the visa stuff, all that needed to happen right away. So that was just a part of the admin, that everything needed to happen on that day. And now you have a short notice fight. So training wise, you have to get yourself 100% ready for this fight. Immediately my weight cut needed to go down because I was prepping for a fight at light heavyweight, which is 7 kgs higher.
Which was the local fight.
Yeah. So my weight was quite high. It was the highest I've ever been this close to a fight. So I was like, oh, now I have to deal with that, all this admin training, getting ready. I mean, and then like that's where I'm getting at, is the mental part of, I just signed the UFC contract. I just signed a fight with the UFC. And then every time I would sit and think about it, I'll be like, no, there's no time to think about that right now. You can't be in the mindset of, I'm fighting in the UFC. I had to be in the mindset of, I'm fighting. I mean, if it was a local fight, if I lost that fight, it would mean the UFC wouldn't look at me because I just lost a local fight. If I lose my debut, I mean, the UFC is not really going to care about me. So it didn't matter to me, like, where I was fighting. I was like, you can let this all sink in and take all the nice stuff in and appreciate life and all that after the fight.
Sure.
Right now, that you only have one task at hand. Get in Abu Dhabi, firstly. Get on the plane. If you're on the plane, you're good. Just get on the plane. Because that was the biggest fight. First is getting on the plane. Second biggest fight, make weight. Then the actual fight. And I just told myself, every time I was catching myself sitting and thinking, wow, I'm going to fight in the UFC. I'm actually going to fight in the UFC on the main card. This is ridiculous. On Fight Island. I would just say, no, you can't think about that right now. Like, I would stop myself 100% saying, it's too close to the fight to be thinking and preparing yourself mentally for what's waiting. Right now, you're going to kind of have to go there and just fight. And that's exactly what happened. I couldn't prepare for this opponent specifically. Even though I never do it really that hard, I just had to focus on going out there and fighting. I mean, it was such short notice that, like, I refused to let myself think about how big the magnitude of the situation was. Insane. And then fight week comes, and I just received I couldn't believe the support. Like, South Africa freaked out. It felt like I was playing World Cup rugby alone. I was like, oh, this is massive. And like, so many people, I had Chad Leclerc messaging me. I had like some friends that are really influential people, like people that I always look up to, and they messaged me, and I was like, this is so insane. I thought maybe people didn't hear about it because this is my first fight, and I just realized the magnitude of the situation. I was like, this is what you wanted, but this is massive, and it's a short notice, and I just realized that there's never going to be a perfect situation for this. I mean, just go out there and do what you do. So, I mean, getting for it, ready for it mentally. And now, also, I'm thinking, oh, yeah, and obviously my first fight ever without a crowd is going to be in the UFC debut. That's awesome. So, yeah, there were so many things that were first for me that, mentally, this was really a tough fight to take. It was really a tough situation to be in, but, I mean, everything worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I guess there is no perfect situation, like whenever it's starting a new business, you're taking on a fight or whatever it is in all kinds of realms. There's never a perfect situation to get into it. But in many ways, this was a very unique situation because you arrived in Abu Dhabi, you go into 2 days of quarantine, right?
Yeah.
And then all these things are new, but at the same time, there's not a lot of people around, so you can kind of focus on certain things.
Yeah, and I think so. I think that you said it just
so it's kind of like gradual. You take in the steps, like you get there, and then you get to meet the media. I just want to touch on the media, and I got to give you your first compliment of this whole thing. We'll get to the fight in a bit, but you were incredible in your media day. Like I watch everything when it comes up to leading up to the fights. I watch the UFC Embedded. I watch all the sort of press conferences. There's various characters in the UFC, but there's so few like you. Like, you sat down, you can see the guys actually enjoy chatting to you. Here's a guy that actually just loves what he does, and he's there. Yeah. And you can smile and you can talk at the same time, and he's someone who actually wants to share a story. Like, did you feel nervous then when you're in front of these guys? Like, because it's like this really big press that goes up there. And obviously you, being an MMA fan and a fighter as well, you know who these guys are. You know how big their audiences are. You know how knowledgeable they are.
Yeah, I mean, they said I have a media day. So firstly, I thought it was a virtual media day, which it was, but not really virtual because it was only me in the room, and then all the reporters, everybody in my junkie, all of them were sitting. It was a big room, and they were sitting in chairs. And my first one was okay. It was with Super Sport because I know the people that I did the interview with. I had 2 for Super Sport, 1 telephonically, 1 on Zoom, and they said, okay, next room it was the media day for the fights, and I went into the room, and as I just walked in, I was still on my phone, and I walked in, I was like, okay, wow, and immediately I'm like, wow, and I see all the reporters, because it's literally they sitting in a room because of the COVID, like a meter and a half apart, everybody, and it's just me in the room, like because they limit the amount of people, just me walking in alone, all these reporters looking at me, and I'm like, wow, and I was like, is this happening right now? And I'm like, they didn't brief me for this. They were just like, okay, your next interview is over here.
It's like, go sit down, Dricus.
Yeah, and like, go sit down. I'm just like, hey guys, what's up? And I see all these people, and I see MMA Junkie and the Mac Life Entertainment, and I'm like, this is massive. I have to take a photo of this. And as I take the photo, I didn't realize like we already started this interview. People, they had everything, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. And I was like, no, I have to be ready for these questions. They're probably gonna ask me like crazy stuff, like, how do you think you can beat this guy? Like, and they were super, like, they know this stuff, like, and as soon as we started talking, I just went, oh, I mean, they were great at making me feel comfortable. I felt really comfortable, and it was like a minute in, it's just like any other interview. They really want to hear, they don't want the premeditated answers. They want the answers. They want to know what you're feeling. And there's so many guys really go into the UFC, and you can see it. They're almost like, yeah, it's UFC. I'm here to show the world. And I'm like, well, that's how I feel as well, but I can't look past the fact that I'm loving this. This is the coolest thing ever.
It totally came across like that. There was real personality.
And that's really the coolest experience. I mean, for me as a fighter, that is the ultimate goal, to eventually become the champion, of course. But I mean, this is the biggest step of my career. The biggest thing to ever happen in my career was that moment. So for me, I tried to play it cool, but there was no playing it cool for me, to be honest. I couldn't. I was just too...
Well, I gotta say, from when we started first working, like, you know, the way that you articulate your points, the way that you show enthusiasm and intent for what it is, like, I mean, you've come a hell of a long way in that respect as well. Which goes to show, like, if you want to be world champ, you know, it's not just about being the best guy in the octagon. You know, I think this week maybe showed you the other aspects about being a top fighter really is, and like dealing with the biggest thing in media in MMA.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's where a lot of people lose fights, or I think that's really where some of the greats are separated. Because you can be the greatest fighter in the world. If you can't deal with your media obligations, if you can't deal with the pressure of... I mean, it's fight week. You're super focused. Some people, like even myself this week, that's fine. My diet, I was like a bit stressed about the weight. Guys are hungry. Guys are stressed out about this fights. They're fighting in the UFC. It's... everything, I mean, all the emotion, all the focus, everything you worry, you're training, you're not feeling too great, you're feeling a little bit weak, it's fight week, you just want to eat, you just want to, you know, get this weight cut over with. And now you have to deal with the whole world's press, and you're on a stage where you have to really look at what you're saying. You can't just be mambling around.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and for me, like, I've always enjoyed that. I've always enjoyed the media. Even though when I was cutting weight hard, I've always enjoyed the media. I've always enjoyed that part of the sport as well. And I do believe a lot of guys, they're like, it feels to them like these people are wasting their time with this media stuff. They don't want to be doing this right now. They want to be focused on the fight. And to me personally, I feel it doesn't help I'm focused on the fight this far out. I'll be focused on the fight when fight day comes. So I think that's a very important part, and to learn to what I learned, like, we've been working together for a while now, and obviously the fights have been getting bigger and bigger, and just to learn to be yourself as much as you can. And you know, this is part of the sport. This is just like making weight. The media is part of it. You have to make weight, you have to win fights, and you have to do the media.
But I think especially in your sport as well, because, you know, you want to fight constantly, fight bigger names to build your profile, extend your career in that respect. It's not like there's a fixture list as an MMA fighter. It's not like in rugby where you go, cool, these are the games, these are the dates. For you, it's all so uncertain. So the more marketable that you are, the more approachable that you are, the more that people can actually buy into your story and create a story, the greater your chance of your fight. Does that kind of play on your mind as well? Yeah,
definitely. The thing is, I'm a fight fan. I was a fight fan first before I became a fighter. So for me, I think that's what gives me a big advantage in the sport. It always has it. My love for it. Everybody loves it, fights, obviously. But I think I like fighting more than anybody in this world. I love fighting. That's what I do all day. I just either training or I'm watching fights at least. I've watched the same fights over and over and over. I'm really a big fight fan, and as a fight fan, I look at embedded shows. You look at the pre-fight interviews, and a lot of guys. That's where you decide which guy you really want to win. I mean, if I look at the interviews and I don't really know the guy's fighting styles, I listen to what this guy's saying, and you make your assumptions on. And as a fan, there's a few things you want to know. There's the stuff that you don't care about, and then there's the stuff you really want to know. Like, I mean, what inspired you to become a fighter? The real questions, the real answers, not just I'm going to beat this guy, I'm the best in the world. Like, everybody, that's cool, but I mean, that is a part of it as well. But when they're asking you real questions, give real answers. And I think as a fight fan, I know exactly what I would like to hear, so I know exactly what other fans would like to hear.
So now you got through the press. There's obviously your basic kind of stuff. You got to worry about your weight, and you got to worry about other little things, little checkpoints that you have there. You're going to have some sort of daily activities. When did you first actually see your opponent? Did you manage to see him before the face-offs?
Yeah, so we lived in the same hotel, so we got there on the Saturday.
Yeah, because that's the thing, like everyo's in that W hotel.
We basically sat next to each other at breakfast every single day.
All right.
Yeah, the first day I was in for 48 hours. I was in quarantine, and we got out, went to the restaurant, and I was obviously looking to see my opponent because I saw his coach, because he's from the biggest team in the world. He's from American Top Team. So he has the same coach as Amanda Nunes. They have quite a few coaches there. That's his head coach. So I saw his coach, and I was like, oh, that's his coach. He's a big deal in the MMA world. And I was looking for him, and then I saw him at breakfast one day, and I was like, obviously you're sizing up your opponent. Then we walked past each other, and there was a little bit of and we met eyes, and I was looking at him, and he came over to say hello, but it was a very weird encounter. But I mean, that was it. Like, we don't even speak the same language, but no, I'm always pretty intense when I see my opponents. I'm not friends with my opponent before the fight ever. Afterwards, definitely. So, I mean, we did see each other. There was some animosity every time when it was, like, I would stare down my opponent at breakfast, and I'll be, like, eating my stuff. I'm like, just checking him out. And he would be, like, feeling very uncomfortable. He'd be like, what's this guy doing? And I was just looking at him the whole time. But, I mean, I guess that's part of the mental game of it. But, yeah, it was such a... Yeah, that's also something getting used to, living in the same hotel for a week, seeing each other at breakfast every single day, and obviously you're trying to see what's he eating, how much weight does he have to cut. Like, you're trying to figure out where is he at mentally, where is he at physically, what's he eating for breakfast, maybe does he have a lot of weight to cut, doesn't he have a lot of weight to cut, all those kind of things that you try and look at when you're sitting at a breakfast table. I mean, because everything about your opponent right now, that's all that matters.
Sure. And then you eventually got to you made weight, and then it's the face-off kind of thing. It was a really cool thing that your opponent made such a big deal about going into that sort of character and the costume, because when it came to seeing all the different face-offs, your fight suddenly became a big thing.
Yeah.
Because they were obviously bigger names in the card, big guys a lot more experienced, but this became something that really did so well on social media. Now, I've seen a lot of your face-offs. I've seen some of your face-offs live. There's nothing that you get. There's nothing. You're the most unflappable person in that situation.
Yeah.
But now you got a guy who's dressed like the Joker. He's in your face. It's weird. You're somewhere different. Like, at that stage, is your mind just in one thing, because you were like stonewalling him? There was no fear. There was no distractions. You were just you were killing him basically already with the eyes.
I was thinking, the thing is with me and face-off, I have one way to do it. Like, when the face-off comes, that's the first time I see my opponent, and it's all business then. Like, for me, the face-off is the fight before the fight. So for me, a face-off is just as serious as the fight itself. I mean, that's where I believe a lot of fights are won and lost at face-off. A lot of times I faced off with guys, and I was like, well, that didn't flatter him at all, didn't do anything to me. It's still, we'll see, fight night's going to make a big difference, the mental. But some guys, you can catch them something at weigh-ins, at the face-offs, you can see this guy's a little bit rattled. You can see this guy is not rattled at all. Like, I mean, you can see a lot about, for me, when I look into my opponent's eyes in that way, I can see a lot of things. So this guy, he came out with his whole act, I guess. And, I mean, I wasn't having any of it. Like, I knew he was going to do it because he did it in his previous fight as well. A few fights. And I was like, that is so stupid. I think it's dumb. I'm like, I don't know why he's doing that. Like, I guess for him it works. That's what he likes to do. I just don't see I don't know. I don't understand why.
There's this really great video I saw on YouTube this week, because that's what I do before a fight. I watch YouTube all week.
Yeah.
And there's this video about 10 times that people try to intimidate their opponents in the face-offs in the backfight.
Yeah, well,
And you actually appear 2 out of 10 times.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's and I saw this guy, and I was like, come on, this is so dumb. But for me, I was like, I don't know what you're trying to do. I don't know what game you're playing or what it is, but
It's a waste of energy.
Yeah, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. I'm there, and I'm gonna let him know from the, like I always do with the face of that. Listen, this is on. This is a fight, and I'm coming there to kill you if I have to. So, I mean, he was playing that whole part, but I don't understand it. And I mean, if you looked at the fight, he didn't fight that way at all. He fought like when the fight started, you could see he was coming out there aggressive and putting the pressure on. He didn't fight the way at the weigh-ins. I was just like thinking, this is a weird guy. Like, he's gonna try something weird when we fight. I knew that. Like, I thought that's what I was thinking. So I was like,
well, he is quite unorthodox in his stance and just 100%. His general demeanor.
Yeah, he looked. Listen, his stand-up looked the best that I've seen it in all the videotape I watched on him, and his stand-up really looked so much cleaner than he did in all of his previous fights. He had a proper stance. He had great pressure. He wanted to obviously clinch with me. That was the plan. I could see it, and that's why in the beginning of the fight I had to move a little bit around, and and like I said, like at the weigh-ins, the guy he portrayed to be in the weigh-ins is not the guy who was in the cage. Definitely not.
Right. Okay, so maybe he achieved something.
I guess so.
But there's something I've noticed about fights that I've seen like recent times. You're not always the fastest starter, and I can kind of understand why, because it's not like you need to go prove something to the guy. Mentally and physically you've got all the attributes you need. So if the fight happens, it happens. A lot of these guys try to get you into a faster start. This was another example. The commentators and anyone watching the fight made a point that you seemed a little bit nervy with it being your first fight. I mean, there's always nerves involved. You said to me before, if you're not nervous about something, you're not really passionate about it. But in that first round, was there a particular sort of game plan to kind of just see how it goes in the first round before you try anything too
So the game plan was, obviously you could see the low kicks I was throwing. I wanted to land 20 in the first round. That was the plan. Land 20 low kicks. I landed 15, but the fight was only 3.5 minutes. So our game plan was land 20 low kicks in the first round. And for this fight specifically, because of the way he fights, very flat-footed, and he's a southpaw. And obviously taking the center of the ring, staying there because he wants to get on the fence and hang on you and do the whole clinch. That's the way he fights. He doesn't fight a fast pace because he gasses out quickly. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to fight as fast as I possibly can, push that pace and get him. The plan was breaking down a little first round, second, third round finish. That was what we were planning. And the way I fight, I always take the middle first. I run, I get to that middle, and I mean, for a fighter, that's an important part because now I have you up against the fence. And when that ref said fight, that guy ran towards me, and I was like, okay, well, I have to make a plan right now because our game plan was get to the middle. He took the middle way faster than I did, and I was on the fence. So I mean, it looked nervous, but I wasn't nervous. It wasn't that. I just knew the only way for me to take the middle right now is I have to push forward. If I push forward, he wants to grab me, and that's not our game plan. Our game plan was staying on the outside. So I had to find a way to circle around him, and that's why it looked like I would kick and run this way and kick and get this way because I wanted to turn around and get to the middle of the cage. But he was keeping the pressure on me, and that's when I started landing some kicks. I missed the first 5 because it was still fresh. He was still moving good, and I landed the third kick. I landed on his leg. I could see he's slowing down. I could see the kick started hurting him, and that's when I started landing some cool counters because obviously always I like to see how hard does this guy hit. What is that? And I could see his punches. He threw everything in them. He caught me with a nice body kick, and I was like, cool. You don't want to be eating too many of those. That's hard. His punches were hard, but not very fast. I could see his timing. I figured that out quickly. I saw he stayed in the pocket for too long. So after he hits, just wait, and then you can hit. And that's essentially how I won the fight. Is he stayed in the pocket for too long, and I caught him with a few counters. And I could feel after around 2 minutes in the fight, in the first round, I could feel the momentum starting to shift because he had all the momentum in the beginning. I was on the back foot and I was like trying to get out of there. I wasn't nervous, and I was figuring out he didn't land any hard shots. I could feel his punch power. I could feel his kicking power. It was almost a feeling out process before I started putting on the pace. And I knew the way he was fighting, that's not his fight style. He doesn't fight with that high pace. And I was like, if I can keep him fighting this way, one round he's going to be tired.
Sure.
So I was like, well, I mean, this is perfect for me. Just land my kicks. Put my hands on my head. Make sure you don't get caught and kick those legs. That's the game plan. And as I saw his legs started hurting, and I saw him getting a little bit, the pace was too high for him. And I saw he backed off a little. And as soon as he backed off, I just went forward. And then I was like, I'm not giving him the center of the cage again. I have him now. And I had the control of the fight for about a minute, where the momentum was in my favor.
Yeah, it was very definite.
Yeah, it was very definite how the momentum shifted. Like, I could see it so clearly, and I started getting comfortable and landing shots and figuring him out, like making him miss and catching him.
But as soon as, like you said with your counters, the momentum kind of changed because your counters were really worrying him.
Yeah.
He thought he could, do the running on the fight, and then suddenly he was getting clipped a bit, and then he just sort of...
Exactly that. And then it started, I could see he was starting to think, okay, I don't want to go in anymore because I'm kicking his legs, or I'm hitting him with big shots if he hits. So he was starting to hesitate and said, okay, let me go backwards and see if I can counter this guy. And I was like, that's a mistake. That's my fight game. If I'm going forward, you're not beating me. And I started going forward, and I went forward for a few seconds before the fight ended. It was just that forward pressure, and that was the game plan. At the end of the day, is keeping the pressure forward, because I could have gone forward earlier, but then I could feel he wants to clinch me, he wants to grab me, and that wasn't my game plan. So I knew if I just push forward, I have to get away around him. I can't just go through him.
Sure.
Because then I'm abandoning my game plan, and I mean, you don't do that. Shouldn't be doing that.
There was something that you said after the fight which I thought was so interesting, going back to the fact that you're a massive fight fan, and something I've always appreciated by watching your fights and chatting to you afterwards is that you've got a great fight brain. It's like you understand movement, you understand tactics, and you can read people very, very well. One of the points that you made to the press afterwards is that when this guy's under pressure, when he's up against the fence, when he's on his feet and he doesn't know quite what to do, he's got that ridiculous kind of spinny elbow, which is obviously a big risk, but it can be hugely rewarding.
Yeah.
Some guys can pull it off. Some guys just can't read the moment when to do it. But you preempted that. You knew you'd get him in a certain situation, he was going to do that. And ultimately, that's where the knockout came.
Yeah.
He went for it, and then you had that small opening.
100%. And if you look at his last fight, he threw it 7 times, and he threw it 5 times in the fight before that. He has 2 knockouts with that exact same shot in his career. So
Against lesser opponents.
yeah.
Clearly.
And the thing is, like, in all of his UFC fights, he's thrown it at least 4 times. So I know he does that. And then, of course, seeing where he does it, from the clinch or when he's backed up against the fence and he's a bit under pressure, he just throws that thing because people back off then, and then he can get back to the center and dictate, try and get out of the situation he's in. And as I kicked him to the body, well, I went for the head, but I kicked him on his arms, and he almost fell to the cage. And as he went to the cage, I saw he turned his hips for a second. As I wanted to go in, he turned his hips, and I was like, there it is. I knew I had him in the fence, and I could see he's setting this up. He wants to go. And I went for it, and I was like, if I go in, I know he's going to throw. And I said, okay, you have to fake that going in. And that's what we planned. If he throws it and he misses, throw the left hook. So I faked in with the right hand. And as I just went in, took my head out, and he threw it. And as he threw it, I just hit the punch. And I landed it. That's why the punch was so low. Like, I wasn't hitting for somewhere else. I could see as his head went down, I was like, there the punch is. And the elbow came past me, and I hit the shot. I didn't think I was going to catch him on the first time that I attempted to counter it. I thought, listen, I know when he throws it, like we've seen this, but I mean, you never really can say 100% this is the timing on it. And that's a shot. Like you said, not a lot of people can land it, but if you land it, you're in big trouble if that elbow hits you in the face.
Well, exactly. The timing, I think it was Dan Hardy that did the analysis around it. It was that the timing was so close, and Andy dropped that elbow just missed you in the front.
Yeah, it's literally, it just went at the side of my head.
He actually made the reference that if you were Pinocchio, it would have knocked you out.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was so interesting, as you say, and this is what makes the sport so amazing. It's all about these split moments, these split seconds, these absolute centimeters are in it. And that one, when you watched it live, at first I thought maybe he slipped and it was a glancing blow, but then you actually watch the slow-mo, it was so pinpoint as you hit him.
It was perfect on that, yeah.
And the guy literally did drop, and you could see his face went one way, his body was the other, and was lights out.
Yeah, I mean, when I hit him, I could feel it was a solid punch, but because it was so early in the fight, and obviously this guy's never been finished. So this is the big deal for me. I've never not finished an opponent. I've always finished all my opponents. So I came into this fight, and the UFC, obviously, they like me because I bring entertaining fights. I always get the finish. Now they're giving me a guy that's never been finished. Yeah. Even against very high-ranked opponents. He's never been finished. Like, they'll beat him on decision, but never been finished. And I'm like, well, I made a clear statement that I'm going out there to finish him, like I do with every other opponent. So, for me, I didn't think there's a chance. Like, I knew in the first round, what I'm going to have to do is going to break him down in the first round and keep the pace. That's how I'm going to finish him. I'm going to tire him out and finish him. He's a really tough customer. He takes big shots, and he can take a punch. I've seen all of his fights. He gets punched hard, and he just keeps on going. Like, he's almost falling around all over the place, but he's not stopping. He keeps on getting away out. So for me, in my mind, I was honestly not thinking. I was thinking second, third round TKO. That was what I would have said about the fight. I didn't think it was going to come in the first round. And when I landed that shot, I could feel it was power. I felt the shot land. You can feel it through your glove. I knew it was a hard shot. But I thought because he turned around, I caught him on the head, but I didn't know it was that hard of a... I didn't know if he was knocked out or he just lost balance because he was off balance.
Sure.
And as he fell, I looked at his head and I went for the follow-up shot because to immediately start, because I thought he was going to grab my leg now we're in a wrestling match. And as he fell, I saw his head touch the canvas before his hands did. And that's how I knew, listen, I think I got him. And I just went for the finish. And when I watched the fight afterwards, I go, I got him proper.
Yeah.
Because I felt the shot land, and I went for the follow-up shot immediately, and I saw his head literally hit the canvas before his hands did. And that's where I knew, listen, I think I got this guy. Like, I can finish this fight right now. And, I mean, everything happened so fast. It was one of those... It's the first time in years that it felt like that, almost like my UFC debut, where after the fight, I couldn't remember what happened at all. Like, I couldn't remember how the fight went, what he landed, what I landed. And I was like, I'm going to have to watch this fight again. When I watched it, I was like, oh, everything came back to me. Like, I was so focused in the moment, so focused and getting in that flow state when I fight. And everything went perfect. I didn't even realize there's no crowd in the middle of the fight. No ways. And, I couldn't remember anything about the fight afterwards. Nothing.
But like, what happens after a fight like that? Obviously, it's so different because there's no crowd. You only got two people in your corner. You got your coach Mornay. You got young Cameron with you as well. What did you guys do after that?
So
you must have been. I mean, you obviously ecstatic about what happened.
So
how do you celebrate?
I always jump on the cage and scream as loud as I can and do my whole primal animal thing. Like, I mean, because it's so. When that ref says stop, there's no better feeling in the world. Like when you're on the top, of course. And that ref's like, stop, and you know you just won that fight. For me, it's the best feeling in the world, or you feel that tap, and you just know it's over. And I told myself before the fight, well, what am I going to do afterwards? Because I can't jump on the fence like I usually do. There's no crowd. It makes no sense to jump on the fence and be like, ah. And when I knocked that guy out, I was just like, jump on the fence. I'm jumping on the fence. I was just so happy. I was like, I'm jumping on this fence. This is the coolest thing ever. And I was screaming so loud. And usually I can't even hear myself screaming because the crowd's also cheering so loud when you knock a guy out. And I was sitting and I was screaming so loud, and I was like, in that arena, everybody was like, what? That was super loud. And I couldn't stop screaming. I was just like, yeah, it's the coolest thing ever.
And then what did you guys do from there? You go back to the change rooms?
We went backstage, immediately phoned my dad. He phoned me. I told him, after the fight, 10 minutes, phone me because I can get to my stuff. Well, firstly, I had to go to the medical rooms. Get that. That's why I said, give me 15 minutes. And he phoned me, and they were obviously going crazy. They couldn't believe it. They were like, what? My dad was so happy. And we went to after medicals, and I did a few interviews with ESPN and all the media stuff. Probably half an hour, and I was back at the hotel because it was right across the road. And then I came to the hotel and I watched the final fight. But as I walked into the hotel, this is the coolest thing. I walk into the hotel, I'm feeling on top of the world. This is the coolest thing ever. We go to the guys who do the photography there, and we took photos with the team afterwards, after the fight, And as we got into the lobby of the hotel, my walkout song started playing, my entrance song.
Oh, wow.
And the whole hotel staff was there in the lobby with like crackers and champagne and just streamers, everything, and they were like cheering my name, and they had boards with my name on it. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So every fighter that won the fight, if they walked in there, your walkout song played, and the whole hotel staff was cheering, and it just made it so special. Then I got to my room. We were like, no, cool, let's go take a shower, all that stuff. We'll meet up. I mean, it's not even breakfast time. Breakfast only opens at 8. So that was such a weird experience. At 5:30, I was back in my hotel room.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing. You're fighting in American time, essentially, but you're in Abu
5:30
Dhabi.
a.m. I was back in my hotel room. So I get to my hotel room, and they had a big tub with champagne in it, and they had that UFC cake, and they were like, congratulations, champ. And it was so cool. And they had that. And when we went down for breakfast, I watched the last fight on my TV in the hotel, because of the COVID thing, they take you back to your hotel immediately, so there's not too many people in the arena. And we got down to breakfast, and they had mimosas there for the winners, and they had like winner glasses, and they gave me the glass, and they made pancakes with the South African flag and
wow.
saying winner. It was so cool. Like they made you feel. It made me feel like I just won the belt. No, and that was so cool. It was, and we sat there and we had a couple of beers immediately. I was like, listen, do you guys sell beers before breakfast? How does that work? And they said, yeah, no, they can give us beers, and we immediately had some beers. I mean, yeah, that's what we do. I mean, we went there with like, yeah, of course, we're in the UFC right now. The UFC bosses are right there. The whole event's there, but I'm like, we're not gonna break character. We deserve this celebration, and me and my team, that's how what we do. We drink beers after a fight, and that's what they asked me on ESPN. They're like, well, what are you gonna do now that you won this fight? I was like, I'm gonna drink some beers. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. So I mean, and we sat there the whole day. Then we got to hang out like after the event. So before that, I couldn't really enjoy. I don't enjoy anything really like going out and seeing the place or going and meeting new people. I'll say hi, take some photos, but ultimately I'm just thinking about one thing, and that's the fight. So after the fight, I got a chance to really be happy and enjoying this experience, have the buffet, which is amazing, have some drinks, and meet the people outside of a professional setting. Everybody was chill because the event was done, so they have a few days off now. So I met all the commentators. I met Dan Hardy, all of them, and we sat there and we had a drink together, and it was so cool because then, like, I really felt like I'm sitting there with the legends, guys that I admire, and they're talking about my fight, and they were like, it was so cool to see, and like me having a beer with them, it was almost, it feels like the whole world's off your shoulders right now.
Yeah, it must be, because all the hard work and everything's gotten to that point. Now you can actually, like, the moment's going to re-sink in.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when I started letting that sink in. That's when I said, I'm letting that sink in right now. That's when it all started. I was sitting there at breakfast, and I was just sitting and thinking, can you believe it? I just won my UFC debut with a first round knockout against a guy who's never been finished.
It really was that kind of dream start, and again, it plays into the whole story about your momentum to this point. Now, obviously, the moment's sinking in. You had your dream debut. You in the UFC kind of setup. Where do you kind of go from here? Do you get an understanding of like what is next, what you need to do, how you need to prepare yourself, what you need to expect? Is there something that you kind of are told or sort of like briefed upon, or is it now just a wait and see kind of process?
Yeah, well, really, ultimately now, the problem is all the fights at Fight Island. I'm staying ready still. If there's a fights this weekend, if they have a light heavyweight fight that somebody pulls out, I'll be ready for that fight. That's the last fight on Fight Island. So I mean, obviously by Wednesday it's not possible anymore, but I'll be ready till then. But then they're going back to Vegas, and for me to fight in Vegas, I need a specific visa for that to be able to earn in the States, and I need to be in the States for that. So right now it's not a possibility, but I'm going to the States later this year to train. December, January, I'm going there to train for 6 weeks. Going to the UFC PI because I'm a UFC fighter now. I get to train there.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I mean, then we starting. They can give me a fight contract. All the fight cards are obviously very full because nobody could really fight for a long time this year. So if there's somebody that pulls out, I said I'm willing to take a short notice fight again, and they said it's not possible because I need the visa. And that's going to take a 4-week process. So for me to fight in the States, and that's all the events, the rest of the year is going to be in the States. So right now it's not a possibility for me to fight this year, and I really wanted to have another 1 or 2 fights before the end of the year. So it's just unfortunate with the whole COVID situation that they can't do events internationally now, only in the States again. So it's probably going to be early next year. I'm probably looking around February to fight, and it's for me right now, people are like, oh, challenge the champ, challenge this guy. And I'm like, that's not how it works. I remember when I was champion in the UFC, it always, like, I hated it when a guy makes his debut, he gets a first round KO in his debut in the UFC, and he's like, yeah, I want the champion. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works, you idiot. Like, I worked years to get to the title shot. You're not just going to, I mean, yeah, great, you beat some random dude in a first round knockout. That was an impressive knockout, but beat somebody with a name, and then you... So I mean, that's where I'm not an idiot. I know how it works, and I'm not somebody that's in the illusion of maybe they give me a title shot next. That's ridiculous to think that. So what I want to do now is really, when I get my title shot, I'm going to be ready. I'm going to be ready to win that belt. I don't want to be saying, oh, I fought Israel Adesanya or I fought for the belt. I'm going to definitely win that belt when I fight for it the first time. I'm going to make the same mistake I made in EFC. The first time I fought for the belt, I wasn't ready to fight for the belt, and I was pushing to get that title shot. Right now, I'm pushing to. I have age on my side, so for me, why I was pushing so hard to fight for this belt, is to get into UFC
Sure.
and start climbing the UFC ladder, getting used to the UFC environment where I'm at a stage where I'm as comfortable in the UFC cage as I was in the UFC cage, because there's a big difference. When I fight in the UFC cage, that place is my home. That's my kingdom there.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm the king there. So now I'm in the UFC. I'm in a pool with some sharks. It's crazy. Then I have to prove myself there, just like I did over here when I was up and coming, and just like I did in KSW. So for me, I'm not calling out top 10 guys. Like there are people, a lot of people were saying Chris Weidman. I'm like, listen, I'll fight Chris Weidman. Make no mistake. Firstly, right now my contract is at a stage where you're not really having any negotiation room in your first 4 fights until they renegotiate for your second contract. So my first goal right now is getting through this first contract, making sure all 4 fights on this contract is wins, and impressive wins.
Sure.
So the UFC knows what's up. And then we talk about, a lot of people say, oh, so you want easy fights in the first 4 fights. I'm like, listen, I'm fighting in the UFC.
Yeah, there's not really.
Where are you going to get an easy fight in the UFC? Please explain.
Not a lot of bums are going to be hanging around.
It's just not possible. I mean, my ranking was number 74 when I signed with the UFC. Now I was a 3-time world champion, and that's where I was ranked in the world. The guys below me are all in the UFC. I fought a guy who was ranked 30. I'm on number 30 now.
Okay.
I jumped 48 rankings with this fight, and listen, this guy was great. This guy was good. And the first time we went in the fight, the first time he hit me, the first time he kicked me, I was like, this is the UFC.
Yeah.
Like I could feel there's a level. There's a level change, and you have to step it up. Like, I know I've always been working hard, but I just realized, listen, you can be so glad you worked so hard, man, because this is not, if you are not 100% ready and you do not 100% belong there, you will get smashed in the UFC. The guys are super high level. Everybody that fights there is brilliant. They're either a black belt or they are some stand-up champion. Nobody fights in the UFC with like 5 or 6 fights. You don't see that. You see guys that have, like me, I have 16 fights out of the UFC, multiple titles, and then the UFC were like, okay, let's give him a shot.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it as well. Like, obviously, this weekend's Khabib versus Gaethje. Khabib was like 14-0 when he got in there.
Gaethje was 17-0 with 15 knockouts.
Exactly, and that's when they got into the UFC.
Yeah, exactly.
So, there's a reason why it's called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Yeah. It's not like, it's just not anything else other than that. Yeah,
so for me right now is to get the next challenge, and the UFC is probably not going to listen to me and my call-outs. I don't have a pool like that. What I'm looking for now is smart fights, guys that are going to push me to a place where I can really be the best that I know. Guys that are on the same path as me, that's what they're going to do. They're going to give me a guy with a 1 or 2 fight win streak. They're going to give me maybe a guy that is on a losing streak, or let's say a guy that's at the not the best half of his career.
Mm-hmm.
A guy that's at the end of his career. They'll give me somebody like that maybe, because that guy is also looking for a win. He's also looking to build himself back up confidence-wise. He's on a 3-fight losing streak. A guy like Gerald Meerschaert. He's ranked number 17 right now, but I'll take that fight in a heartbeat. Because that guy is his age is not great. His confidence is very low. So for me as a fighter, that's a great fight because, I mean, like I said, no easy fights. He's a killer, that guy. But confidence-wise, he doesn't believe he can win. And he would take that fight as well, because he's like, there's a lot of hype around this guy. This is my comeback fight if I just get that confidence boost. So, I mean, that's the kind of fights that I'll be looking for. And also fighting guys around me, because there's a couple of killers, guys that just made their debuts, just like me, who won with knockouts, guys who won on 2-fight win streaks, that got 2 finishes. That's the kind of guys that I'm going to be up against. So I'm fighting guys there's no easy fights in the UFC. That's basically what it comes down to. But, taking smart fights in this first 4 fights, building my resume, and then for the next contract, say, listen, now I'm ready to go for that top 15 ranked guys. And
that's exactly it. Like, now you're bringing the leverage, because now your story is that much greater.
100%.
It's up there with the other guys, so it's a proper match.
100%. I mean, if you win 4 fights in a row really convincingly in the UFC, in any other organization, if you win 4 in a row convincingly, you're a champion.
Yeah.
In the UFC, that might get you into the top 20.
Well, we saw with Tony Ferguson how long his streak
18
was.
18 fights.
Before he got to the chance where he could get into the belt level.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's why I'm so happy I got a debut. I've always said that's what I want. I want a debut. I don't want a debut against a guy that's also making his debut, or a guy that's on the contender series. And I wanted to make my debut against a big name, and I did. I got that
On the main card.
on the main card. I mean, it doesn't. And I mean, like I said, I skipped 48 rankings.
Yeah.
Imagine if I started at like number 60, then 58, 55. That would take 5 years before you get close to a title shot. I don't want that. I need 2 years to get to that belt.
It really is just it's a fight in all ways, your career, in every single sense.
It's me and my brother spoke about it the other day, and we said, when was the fight at hand not the most important fight of my career?
True.
Like every single fight, it's like, this is the one. My fight with Brendan Lazar, you might say, listen, it was Brendan Lazar. Come on, imagine I lost that fight. I couldn't have lost that fight.
All the good work's been derailed.
All my titles are gone. I mean, losing against a 3-0 guy, that would have been devastating for my career. So that was the most important fight of my career. Going up against Yannick Bahati, most important fight of my career. My first welterweight title shot. Most important fight. KSW debut. Most important fight. And I mean, this fight was obviously by far the most important fight, because here's the UFC. They're like, okay, this guy is making a lot of noise. People are talking about him. Let's see if he has got what it takes. And I mean, imagine me losing this fight, and people would be like, yeah, cool. We always knew you were the king in a place where it wasn't really hard. You were a big fish in a small pond. I mean, and that was that was a big thing for this fight. I was like, I can show the world, and I said it in the interview, I think I said, I want to show the world what I've known for a while. Like my team and all of us, we've known for a while that we're ready for that. And it's finally the time I can show the world that we've known for a while.
Well, Dricus, I mean, your story is a natural one for me, and that's something that I'm very interested about. And again, you did mention it, is that you would be the first proper African UFC champion, as in...
And did I get flack for that comment?
Well, I'm sure you would have. But I mean, like, it's true though. Born, raised, your team is from here as well. It's something, like, there's so many different unique touch points in your career, which are really, really encouraging. You say your next kind of step is to now go train in America. You did that already at the beginning of this year.
Yeah, beginning of this year, yeah.
So you went with Henry Hooft.
Yeah, I'm going back to that team. I'm going back to them.
I mean, and that is a gym of highest quality. Like, you are sparring with kind of the best in the business. That's where Kamaru Usman trains. Yeah,
I mean, they have killers there. They have like 30 UFC fighters, Bellator fighters. They have crazy Aung Lang Song, who's a double division champion in ONE FC. They have Derek Brunson, who's a middleweight, number 7 ranked in the UFC.
Yeah.
They have...
I mean, like Burns is there as well.
Yeah,
those guys
Gilbert Burns, Kamaru Usman. I mean,
yeah.
they have some crazy talent. I mean, that's where I go test myself, and that's where... I mean... And that's the thing, what people are like, are you going to move to a bigger gym? I'm like, no. Like, that's the biggest question I've been getting. People are like, so are you going to live in the States now? And I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'll go train to test myself, and making sure you have to do that. You have to get that confirmation that you're on the right track and what we're doing here, because we're in a place where geographically we are not really part of the mixed martial arts world.
Sure.
We're kind of isolated, especially in South Africa. There's no other place in Africa you can go and train. It's going to help you. So, I mean, we have to do what we think is right here, and then we go there, and that's almost like a little test to see before you write your exams, which is a fight. And, I learn a lot from them, but I also believe there's a lot that they can learn from us as a country. I mean, if you look at it, we spoke about it yesterday as well. Those guys have been endorsed for wrestling since they were 5 years old in school. They get it from school. And then your high school, you're getting money to wrestle. After school, you're getting paid to wrestle. All of that. In South Africa, we don't imagine you have to make a living from wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's even a wrestling club in most towns.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you want to be everything we do is locally created. All the skills I have, locally created. My coach made those skills from his own mind. We didn't have any international guys coming helping us out saying, oh, this is how you do MMA. No, we had to figure all of that out for ourselves. My coach is a first generation coach. I'll be a second generation coach. They have third, fourth generation coaches. So, I mean, that's why it's so important for me to say, listen, I'm the first real African. Meaning, I live here, I'm born here, I trained here. I wasn't born in Africa, moved to the States when I was 4 years old and lived there my whole entire life. No. The first time I went out of this country, I was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's what I was trying to say. And I mean, a lot of people are like, what do you mean the only African? I'm like, chill out. What I'm saying is, trained, I work, I live here. Everything I do is from Africa. My coaching is from Africa. My teammates are from Africa. My gym is in Africa. And I stick by that. Like, my gym, the cool thing is now the world, like we said, we see what we've been doing all these years. We just fought on the biggest stage in the world, and
Exactly.
we proved that we have what it takes. And I mean, in such a young sport, with not even close to the backing that gyms in bigger countries get, we did it. And I mean, it's cool for us to travel there, and the team there at Sanford MMA, those guys are amazing. They've been so welcoming, and this time I want to take my coach with, I want to take teammates with, all of that. And we have a great relationship. Start building with my coaches there, my coaches here, and that's the development of the sport. And we can bring the knowledge we get there, bring it over here. We can even take some knowledge over to them.
Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is, like in South Africa, I mean, you grew up, you played rugby. Kickboxing is obviously a huge part of your upbringing. There's judo in the mix there as well. But it's a really interesting dynamic because, when you want to get into the bigger stages in sport and you wonder why people don't cut it, and it's across all sports really, you're up against so much. You're not just up against someone who's talented, you're up against someone who's institutionally better off than you.
100%.
They are further along in their development, they're further along in their physicality, they're further along in the skill set and experience. So it does make your feat that much more interesting and that much more impressive, is that it's all happened here in Pretoria. All the things that you learned basically is from fighting with your brothers to playing rugby to getting into kickboxing to now obviously what you and Mornay are doing, as you say. It's the first generation. You guys got together and you just used what you thought was best.
Yeah.
And now that's on against the world stage. I mean, that in itself just makes all of this so much more impressive.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about. Like, I look at it and I'm like, this guy's, his dad was a UFC fighter or something. And I'm like, what? That's crazy. Like, I mean, my dad didn't even know what MMA was until I had a few fights in MMA. He was like, what's that?
Yeah.
And they didn't even know. Like, people didn't know. This 10 years ago, not one person knew what MMA was in South Africa. So it's so young, the sport. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, all South African guys that make it in the UFC, just make it to the UFC. That is such an amazing compliment. Such an amazing achievement. It's ridiculous.
It really is incredible. One last thing before I let you go, and that's obviously the big talking point that everyone who is an MMA fan or even just someone who's watching TV right now, the lightweight title, Gaethje versus Khabib. About 2 years ago, you wouldn't think that Gaethje would be in the mix. Also, it'd be hard-pressed to think that someone like Khabib could be so far unbeaten. You maybe think Tony Ferguson would have been here, but this feels like the most incredible title fight. It's got everything that's possibly there, and it's got all the makings for fight of the year because you've got different contrasting styles. Now, when Gaethje got against Ferguson, people said Ferguson's going to win. You said not a chance. Gaethje's an absolute animal. He's going to win this fight. You were right then. What are your feelings going into this one?
I honestly feel that Justin Gaethje is the guy to beat Khabib. For the reason, so listen to this. If Conor fights Khabib again, there's a chance that Conor could beat him, depending on where his mind space is at. But I think Khabib is too good at what he does for Conor to beat him. I do believe Conor can beat Gaethje just because of the styles. Gaethje strikes, he likes to bang, and Conor is just too accurate. If you want to beat Conor, you have to do what Khabib did. But then again, I believe Gaethje has the style to beat Khabib because Gaethje can strike in the clinch. He can strike from very close by because he had to learn to fight that way because of his eyes. He hits incredibly hard. He has a crazy fight pace. He has crazy cardio, and he has that heart. Like, he just doesn't give up. He's like, either he wins by knockout or he gets knocked out. Like, that's the way he goes. And
he's totally okay with both.
He's okay with both. But 7 fights, 9 performance bonuses.
Yeah.
How do you get that? That's like at least one per fight.
Yeah.
At least one per fight. So there's 2 fights where he's gotten a performance of the night and a fight of the night. That means he is something special. Like, he's such an incredible fighter, and he does everything so unique. Like, if you look at him from a coach's perspective, he does everything wrong. But he has such a unique style, and that's what I love about him. He can kick from such a close range, and he's obviously not going to kick too much in this fight in the beginning, at least. But he has that power and that overhand from the clinch. And I think with Khabib, he's never been in a situation where Gaethje is a All-American wrestler as well.
Sure.
So he knows the wrestling part of Khabib, and he can strike, and that's what I believe. And he has that cardio to go with it. He can just grind it out. So with Khabib, we've seen with Khabib, he can get tired, and especially Khabib doesn't take punishment too well. When he gets caught, he just shoots for a takedown immediately. And I honestly believe Gaethje is the guy if he catches Khabib can't take the kind of damage that Tony Ferguson took. So everybody was like, Tony Ferguson's the guy to beat Khabib. And Justin Gaethje demolished him.
I still find it hard to watch highlights of that fight.
I watched that fight again yesterday.
It was so brutal.
I watched that fight again yesterday, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Every time I see it, I'm like, no ways. Like, one man can't take that man.
I got to turn the sound down because it just becomes too harsh.
And I mean, Khabib, I don't believe Khabib can take the kind of punishment that Tony took.
No, definitely not.
And I mean, Tony, if you look at him, he's an All-American wrestler as well. He couldn't get the fight even close to the floor.
But it's an interesting thing about the wrestling because, you touched on the whole fight bonus thing. Gaethje wants to knock you out because he wants to be entertaining. And
he just says it. He's like, I'm not using my wrestling because that's not entertaining.
That's the whole thing. I mean, even with like a lot of these guys, they don't go to that. Like a Ben Askren, that's his game. That's his strong
Tyron
point.
Woodley, for example.
But the whole thing about Gaethje, which I find so interesting, you touched on that his eyes were so bad. He was like a mole. Yeah. And then when he got to the UFC, he had an operation just so he can see better. But the guy had to get close to you to almost like feel you out.
Yeah, I mean, so what he said in the beginning of his career, he had to touch his opponent to be able to get the distance. So that's why you see it in his fights. He still fights like that because, I mean, if you had a career of 17 fights and that's the way you learned yourself how to fight, now you have better eyesight. That's great, but you're still not going to be a different fighter. You're not going to be someone that's, now I'm fighting outside. And now for the first time, and we started seeing that in Gaethje's fights, his last two fights with Epson Barbosa and with Tony Ferguson, he's not that guy who just goes in and brawls like he used to. Like, he was like live or die. That's it. Like, that's how he fought. And
you also heard it in the Ferguson fight. I think it was after the second round or so.
His coach said
just take a bit off. You don't have to keep knocking him out. Take a bit off. Be accurate.
And you could see it, like, he would hurt him and he would be patient. Usually when he catches a guy or a guy catches him, he just starts swinging for the fences. And that's why I believe Gaethje is he's refined his style and he has that animal in him and he can brawl it out. But now he's learned to channel that energy and not just go for the kill or be killed and just use it more intelligently. When the time comes, go for the kill, but be more intelligent about it. And that's why I think, I honestly feel, I don't know, I just have this feeling that I think he's going to...
I've kind of got the same feeling. If you were to go into stats, and stats are very subjective in most sports, but in all sports, but I think there was a stat that he's been on his back for all of 15 seconds in the UFC. His defense is just ridiculous. It's difficult to get him down. He's so unconventional high moves, and as good as Khabib is, as you say, like, when under pressure, Khabib goes for that takedown. If he can't take the dude down, and he's getting punched in the clinch as it is, I would also say, like, as much as Khabib is so well-rounded, the guy's so motivated, obviously the dad factor, that's going to play a huge role. But, I'm just hugely excited about this fight.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't mean to disrespect Khabib in any way. He doesn't deserve that. He is, 28-0 UFC champion. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I'm just a big fan of Justin Gaethje. He's my favorite fighter at the moment, I think.
Yeah, well, outside of you, likewise. Maybe the two of you together.
Yeah.
Lucas, thanks so much for your time today. Obviously, the road is kind of uncertain when we'll be seeing you fighting again, but you've got the big training camp coming up. You're going to end the year very strong. 2020 has been a dodgy year for most people, but it's been a breakout year in this respect. 100%. And I think I speak for all SA fight fans or sports fans. We can't be prouder. And this next fight, I think, will be even more support, even bigger audience, and hopefully huge crowds too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Are you an athlete looking to better commercialize your career? Visit matchkit.co/register and see what this unique web builder can do for your sporting profile.